Good morning, everyone. My name is Regina Newkirk-Rucci. I'm the Director of Equity for 90 Forward, and I am joined here today by Dr. Kimberly Allen, who is our CEO, as well as Tracy Towsey, who is the chair of the board. And we are coming together to talk about this viral video that has really taken over the internet for about the past week, about this incident at Sesame Place with these two children who were sort of ignored. And so just before we start, let's take a quick view of that video. All right, so we can see the Rosita character is coming up. The two girls are reaching out and the Rosita character really sort of stops looking at them. And so a lot of people have been talking about what happened and how horrible it was for these kids. And I think we can all admit, I would be heartbroken if that were my children who were so excited. They clearly were so excited to see Rosita at Sesame Place. I'm imagining that's probably one of the reasons they came, and to just be what I would consider just dissed by Rosita. Really just an unbelievably sad and unfortunate event for those girls. However, today, from the Center of Corporate and Community Equity standpoint, we really want to look at how Sesame Place responded, because I think a lot of times corporations have good intentions, and sometimes they don't. They're just trying to, manage the situation. But how you go about handling an incident like this is really key. And I think we can all admit that Sesame Place has had some missteps in this, but I wanted us to have an opportunity to really go in and examine what they did. So let's look at this and talk about it a little bit more. I'm going to share my screen of Sesame Place's first response to the incident. I'm sorry, give me just one moment. All right. So when you all saw this statement, what were your immediate reactions to it? Well, first of all, let's talk about why they wrote this statement in the first place. Because I think intention really matters. So if you're looking at this, why do you all think that this statement was crafted?
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Tracy. No, go right ahead.
It definitely sounds like an attempt to kind of control the message. And it sounds like they're trying to explain away what happened, to cut down on the criticism and then potentially cut down on any accusation that they've done anything wrong.
And truthfully, I think that's the first problem, right? The damage control is always important. And, my years in communication, I know that's something that you have to do. But if you're trying to take your finger and point it somewhere else, or explain away bad behavior, as opposed to offer a sincere apology, that's going to shine through. So it comes across as disingenuous because you're trying to say, oh, I know what you think you saw, but you really saw something else. That's not what happened. And people aren't going to believe that because they're actually watching it with their eyes.
Yeah, and then in addition to that, I think in general, we've just really forgotten how to apologize. We don't know what it means to sincerely say, I am sorry, and not put a lot of disclaimers. Not, I'm sorry if you felt that way, or I'm sorry if you felt like this hurt you, or I'm sorry if, fill in the blank. Just a genuine, I'm sorry, period. Here's how we're going to move going forward so that we don't repeat those same mistakes. But But I think in general, I don't think this is certainly a microcosm of a bigger societal issue of just apologizing in general. But what does it mean to take accountability and acknowledge hurt regardless of the intent? We talk about that in our Intro to Racial Discussions course, having to own what you say and take responsibility for what you do, and regardless of the intent of what you meant, how it landed, how it was received, and what the consequences were very real for the other people involved.
Right. And I also think that a lot of times HR and communications teams sort of tussle with legal departments, because the legal department is probably advising, like, don't admit fault. We don't want to have a liability situation on our hands. And I think that an apology is somehow been equated with admitting fault. And I think if you have this a really sincere apology, it does not equal fault, and it doesn't set you up for liability. I think when you start putting all those explanations and disclaimers on it, that's really when you get into the potential for that. And that's not what people are wanting. People are just wanting, I am so sorry. That should not have happened to you. And that happened to you because of what we did. And we apologize for that. We aim to do better. So I think, you have to find the balance, because I certainly understand the legal concerns in this, but you have to find the balance of being sincere in the apology, which is the critical piece here, but not setting your organization up for a lawsuit.
Yeah. And the irony here, Regina, is that I think probably the underlying incident, so a one-off incident at the park probably would not have ultimately been a big legal liability for the company. But what they did by not acknowledging that this was a real problem, acknowledging what we can all see with our own eyes, which was that these girls felt snubbed by this character, is that they then set off, a week's worth of talking about Sesame Place as a place that, doesn't look after children and doesn't care for children. And so ultimately the damage to the company has probably been a lot greater in terms of brand and reputation than they ever would have faced from, one bad incident at the park with a genuine apology that, the family probably would, if it had been genuine, the family might have accepted it.
Well, and let's get into that, right? So they've made this statement. Let's talk about the problematic pieces of this particular statement. Because I think the first few sentences are okay. I really would have liked a stronger statement about their value proposition as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion. But I think that the first three sentences are okay. But for me, it gets into problematic territory when they start giving all of these reasons for what happened. So regarding the incident yesterday, the costumes our performers wear sometimes make it difficult to see at lower levels, and sometimes our performers miss hug requests from guests. What was your reaction to that part of the statement?
For me, it was gut wrenching, because it was like, it was it's like, okay, we're going down a path, we see where this is going, and then, man, you just missed that left turn real, like by a mile. Because because what they set up in the beginning was really strong in saying, perhaps, we need to make sure that our employees understand that we really value this, and this was a misstep. But saying that, she might have missed her when there are other videos of the same thing happening, and immediately after, hugging another white child, and then waving and embracing the child even before, who's at the same level, in a park where it's full of children. Most of the children are probably at the same level. So, that was just, I tell my kids, if you have to start explaining away what you did by telling me what somebody else did or didn't do, then you've already missed the boat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And clearly the employee saw the children because she waved no at them. So she, it was not I don't see that you're there. It was clearly there was eye contact and there was a response, which was the, waving no. And so it just feels really extraneous. It feels like sort of trying to come up with a justification where there isn't one.
And I
And it
think,
also, I'm sorry, Regina, I was just going to say real quick, it also really makes me think about whether or not there is a DEI culture. Because I think in particular, when we see the other videos where awkward things are happening to Black children, and the Rosita character and the other character that eventually emerged, I have to just question, is there a sincere commitment to DEI? And if it is, if it's not permeating down to the employees, because culture it's everybody who's within it. It's down to the folks who are wearing the costumes, to the folks who are cleaning up the streets after the parade is done, right? It's in everything that you do. It doesn't just sit in a department or at leadership or in this statement. It has to be a consistent part of who you are as a culture, and it should be evident.
and I think that truthfully is part of the problem here, because what it does is it sets you up to not be believed. So I saw the character wave off the children. So your statement rings false for me. Well, now that makes the entirety of your statement ring false for me. I don't believe you have a DEI culture. I don't believe that inclusivity is really important for you. It feels like excuses, 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 and the right thing to say, which if that's where you're going to come off, truthfully, you would have been better not putting out a statement at all. And that is one of the biggest challenges I see with corporations, is you really do have to be true to who you are. And if DEI is not a part of your culture, don't really try to say that it is. We believe it should be, and it should be a goal. And maybe that's something that you're going to work to include, and you could say that, but don't fake the funk. Because it will come through, and as it did in this particular statement.
And just a thought here, I'm curious to know, and because I think you said something really powerful, Regina, in that you'd come out better not releasing a statement. Like, could a course of action have been that they reached directly out to this family and worked some things out with this family, and the statement simply say, we are well aware of the events that occurred yesterday. We are working with the family to rectify the situation, period. And that way it's you don't sort of trip over all the words, but you're also showing that you're taking action. It doesn't have to be this long statement.
I would agree with that, except that fact that I think you have to also state that you're dealing with the employee. Because even if DEI is not a part of your culture, I certainly hope that treating your customers well, valuing your clientele is. There's still an issue with your employee. So yes, I think you could have stated, we've been made aware of this situation. We are in the process of addressing issues with the employee and reaching out to the family to rectify the situation to ensure it doesn't happen again. That would have been it. And if they had done that, they wouldn't have gotten the backlash either.
Yeah. And then that assures future customers too, that we're not going to let things like this continue to happen and continue to explain them away in the future. Don't worry, you can come here and not worry that your children will be treated this way.
Exactly. And I do really recognize the bind that companies are in, because you really shouldn't discuss HR matters publicly, certainly not in a PR statement. However, you can talk about the range of possibilities. You can discuss that you are going to be addressing the issue with the employee. You don't have to say how it's going to be addressed, but the fact that this is a serious matter and we're going to be working with this employee directly also conveys that to people, because I think most people have an understanding that, hey, we're not going to sit here and say, yeah, we're going to fire him, or he's going to be put on a 30-day work plan. I think most people understand that that's not going to happen, but there should be some indication that those kinds of things are a possibility, because it is such a serious matter.
Right. You can communicate what your standards are for employees and what is okay and what's not okay without commenting directly on what's happening with that employee.
Right. And then, some of these other things in the last paragraph of this statement, again, they just don't ring true. They're saying that they didn't direct the no hand gestures at people, which tells me two things. A, you're trying to tell me that my eyes don't work, but B, it also says that you talked with the employee, which to me sounds like it's an investigation that is completed and you have resolved that the employee did nothing wrong. That is problematic. Again, you don't need to discuss what happened in an HR situation, and you really should take time to investigate what happened. But now, with all these other videos coming out about and I don't know if it's the same employee in the Rosita costume, but other videos of this happening with other children, this doesn't even make sense now. So you've also set yourself up because you didn't do a thorough investigation, but you wrote the statement as if you had.
Yeah.
All right, so very quickly, they've said this is the first statement that they put out. I also want to look at the second statement that they submitted. So Sesame Workshop submitted a statement. I'm going to put it up on the screen very quickly. So this is the parent company for Sesame Place, and I think maybe even Sesame Street. And they've said, hey, we're going to work with them. We're going to talk with them about making sure that they conduct training and that they really review what their policies and engagement practices are. I think the parent company putting out a statement, again, it feels like damage control, but you don't really you're not saying that you can control what's happening at the company. So I'm not sure why you're saying it at all. But I think the second statement from Sesame Place gets to some other issues as well. Oh, that's the first statement, sorry. Okay, I'm not sure what's happening here. I'm having a little bit of an issue. Give me just 1 second. All right, so did you all have any other thoughts about what you think Sesame Place should have done?
I think it goes back to what you said, Regina, just about sincerity and authenticity, and what you said, Kim, about an apology. That at the end of the day, we had a family come to the park and the children felt, they left feeling like they had been mistreated, and they were. And I don't think that anyone would argue with that family's experience is not something that the company wanted to happen. Right. And so if that's where they're coming from, then whatever they're doing needs to come from that place of genuinely feeling sorry and genuinely wanting to try to make it right with that family, as opposed to sort of self-protection and spin. And then being willing to acknowledge where you may still have, you have some issues with employees and you may need to have addressed with some training, and just be really open about that, as opposed to, trying to just sort of keep things at arm's length. And I think in this case, it really came back to bite them. And the sad thing is they probably could have handled it differently. And it could have been a positive experience. It could have been a learning experience for them and for, for the folks their customers.
And I think it could have been a learning experience for other corporations too, about how to handle missteps or egregious or small And this in particular was egregious because it was kids, and they were so cute, and they were ready, and they were excited, and to see the disappointment on their faces, and to know that that experience is going to stick with them. I think we have to stop acting out of self-preservation and start acting with the knowledge that the things that the way that we transgress people sometimes last a lifetime. And so when you know that those things have the ability to last a lifetime, you apologize sincerely and profusely, because you know that the lasting impact of that. And I'm sure whoever the parent was that recorded this, was recording it so that they'd have this positive memory of, hey, you remember when you went and we saw the Sesame Street, and this is what it's turned into. So that's going to become a memory that's burned in that family and those children's brains for the rest of their lives. And I think if we just start to act with the knowledge that these things are not just momentary, even a lawsuit is a moment in time, but the experience that these two little girls and the other Black children who we saw in the other videos will last them a lifetime.
Yeah. And that's also too, one of those things where the mother is talking about the fact that she was asking about the employee, and she was sort of giving them runaround. I think that's another situation where, had it been dealt with on the spot, it wouldn't have even gone viral. Mm-hmm. And so you could have had an employee, a manager intervention that was effective, that could have taken care of the whole situation right there. And then that gets back to the culture you have in your organization. So let's look at this last statement that they have. So this is the most recent statement that they put out. My initial reaction to this is, I feel like the default in these situations is we're going to provide training for our employees. And I think this goes back to your statement, Kim, that it's about having the culture. It is not about having a training in response to a crisis, because your training is then going to be ineffective because you don't have the culture to back it up. And all it's going to do is probably tick off your employees and probably make your DEI efforts even less successful, because everybody knows what you're doing. Again, I feel like it's just weak tea.
Yeah.
Especially for this to be the second statement. You saw the reaction. You had a chance to really learn because you saw how people responded. And this is the follow-up statement, which really saddens me, because it's very clear to me that they don't have the right people in leadership and in communications drafting these kinds of decisions, because you don't understand why people are upset. You don't understand what people want in this situation.
Mm-hmm. It seems like maybe if this had been the first statement, then the whole thing might have come across as more sincere, right? So it still reflects that they don't have an underlying culture of DE&I training, and that's not part of, like if they're just doing training in response to an incident, that's still not ideal. But if this were the first statement, it at least sounds a little more like a genuine apology, but a genuine apology that comes after a denial and then a bigger backlash is never going to have the same kind of healing effect. Because if you have to beg for an apology, it doesn't feel ever as sincere as one that is, comes right away in response to seeing, the hurt.
Right. And it doesn't feel like an apology to me. It just, I know that's the third word in the statement, but it does not feel like an apology to me at all.
Mm-hmm.
No, it doesn't. It certainly doesn't feel like an apology. But what is also clear, to your point, Regina, about what does it mean to have a DEI culture, or a culture of belonging, a culture of respect, a culture of inclusivity. And I explained it to someone the other day, like it's like glasses, right? If you walk into a 3D movie, you have to have those like special 3D glasses in order to get the full effect, to see things through that lens. You can certainly walk into a 3D movie without the glasses and you can see what's going on, right? But you won't see all of the effects and the dynamics and the depth and the dimension that's there. And DEI culture is very much like that. When you walk into this place, you can't walk in this place without your 3D glasses on because you will miss something. And when from the time you start at my company or my organization, I give you this pair of glasses and I say, this is how we see our movie in this place. And every time you walk through our doors, you need those 3D glasses on. Well, sometimes folks get tired of wearing the glasses, right? They take them off. They want to give their eyes a break. There's so much coming at them. But what I say is, for some folks, those 3D glasses are glued to their faces. They can't take them off even for a second. And so if that means for the 8 hours that you're at work, that we need to find a way to make sure that though, maybe we need to put a nose bridge there or something, whatever it is, it's going to make them fit a little bit better. But you got to wear them. And if everybody's not wearing them, we're not seeing the same picture and we're not acting and responding in the same way. And it doesn't sound like they have a DEI culture.
Mm.
Well, and I think that lots of times organizations get hung up on the D in DEI, right? We want to make sure that we have employees of color. We want to make sure that we have women. But if you have a true, equitable, inclusive culture, you are going to be more productive. And I think that's the piece that organizations miss, because if they had a DEI culture, then you understand the fact that you've got some differences with children, and you're aware of some of those cultural differences, and you work to do the little things that provide them with an extraordinary experience. Well, you know what? If I'm mom and my baby's happy at this park, I'm going to be happy. And then I'm going to tell other people about it, and they're going to come. And so it really does lend to better customer service. Your employees are happier, right? Because you recognize the differences and the talents, the difference in the talents that they bring to the table, and give them an opportunity to shine in those. Your morale is better, retention is better. Like, it just makes all of these things that go to the bottom line better. And so while I like your metaphor of the glasses, I think what people aren't recognizing is when you don't have those glasses on, you're losing money. Mm-hmm. All right, so as we wrap up today, what I really want to also hit is we have another company that has a situation like this. An employee acts in a discriminatory way. What kind of advice would you give to an employee, to a company, in releasing a statement addressing the issue?
I first say that less is more. I think don't put a whole lot of things in there because you give too much away. That's number one. And then what you do decide to put in that short piece needs to be of the utmost sincerity. It needs to be a genuine apology. I am sorry. We are sorry. And here's how we are moving forward to make sure that this does not happen again. And this is how we are going to make sure that we are really and truly living out our values related to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging.
And I think you do that if you really have those values. If you don't try to fake it. Like, maybe you try to move your organization to that. But if you don't already have those values in place, Do not claim that you do. It will show through. I think that
Mhm.
insincerity will come through.
Yeah.
All right. I would also say that you also ought to look at some of your practices, right, as an organization. Um, because the following videos, and again, we don't know if it's the same employee in the costume, but I think there's a decent chance that it is, shows us this is a pattern. So there's obviously some type of either implicit or explicit bias happening. You have to look at the practices you have that allow for an employee with those types of biases to come into your organization, right? What are your hiring practices? What are your interview and vetting practices? How are you ensuring that your employees believe in and uphold the values you have as an organization? I think that's hugely important. Because you don't want to be in a position where you have to fire somebody. You want to be in a position where you hire the right person.
Mhm.
And then I would also add, I think you need really good feedback systems. Um, all of these parents who sent in these videos were ticked, right? But you didn't know it.
Yeah.
There were, I don't know, what do we see, like 6 or 7 videos? You had all of these disgruntled parents and you had no way of knowing that. And the way that you found out is when the world found out. That is the worst way to find out. So really looking at how you're getting feedback, because this is a problem that could have been identified a while ago and you could have rectified it already. It would have happened this time. As well as your employees. It's not like other employees didn't see it. And if you had a way for your employees to discuss this, they would have given you that feedback as well. Right. Any other tips as we close? Because I think that we continue to see a lot of organizations really making some insensitive communication decisions as it relates to DEI related issues. Any closing thoughts, advice?
I'd say also, let's make sure that you truly have leadership that is also diverse, equitable, inclusive, and feel like they belong. Because a lot of times they can help you to build the systems where you get feedback, to build the culture, help you build the culture, help you, fill in the gaps, so that when you do have issues that come up, because nobody's perfect, the issues are going to arise, that you know how to respond appropriately. And how do you take steps and measures to ensure that it doesn't happen again? So having a table that is not just diverse, but it also really does reflect the value of being inclusive and, and the respectful, and where folks feel like they belong, is also key.
Yeah, I feel like all I would underscore is what I've heard and learned from both of you in this call, which is how probably a lot of companies are like just talking the talk right now when it comes to DEI, and that how quickly that can come back to bite you, right? And so it's just from top to bottom, just decide on the front end, this is something that actually matters to us. It actually is a value to us. It actually is going to add value to our company. And when you do that, you'll do things like build diverse leadership. You'll build systems that invite good feedback. You will do the training on the front end, and you will be better equipped to respond when something bad, may still happen. So it's making a genuine commitment on the front end that's going to set you up for success.
All right. Well, I want to thank both of you ladies for joining me for this session today. And for anyone who is interested in these types of services, 90 Forward provides equity audits to really look at your workspace, to talk about how equitable it is for your employees and how you can make a few changes to maximize employee retention, morale, and productivity. We also provide these types of trainings and true DEI trainings to build culture. And it does start from the top and work all the way down through every employee in the organization. We also provide coaching services so that if you are leading diverse teams or there are issues in particular that you need to address within your organization, really having the skills and the toolkit to do that effectively in a way that brings your team closer together as opposed to drives them apart. So we want to thank everyone for joining us today, and we look forward to opportunities to share more insights about ways that businesses can really improve and be more diverse, equitable, and inclusive to create a belonging culture in their organization. All right. Thank you. Have a great day.